I'm humbled and excited that I have my old advisor here. I shouldn't say old advisor. He will always be my advisor. I shouldn't say it. He'll always be my advisor. And yeah, just thank you all. I wouldn't be the success that I am today without the community of Salem State, of Malden High School, of Salem, the city, San Francisco, Malden, Massachusetts. So I thank you all for being a part of the journey. The slideshow I had got corrupted. So I'm actually using an earlier slideshow, and we don't have a preview. So I'm just winging it. That this is going to be a little bit of a wingy type of thing. But as much as great as it is, all these folks coming out, this is the wildest thing that happened to me today. So after I did convocation, a young lady came up to me, a freshman, walked up, and she said, "Hey, you went to school with my mom, and she wanted me to give you this." And so she pulled out a comic that I did in 1982. There were these three sisters I had a crush on, and this was one of the sisters, and I gave her some artwork. And she saved it all these years, and her daughter, who is now a freshman at Salem State, just gave it back to me. And so it's pretty amazing. So I said I'd put in a good word for her. I don't know what she's taking, but the last name's Bello. So my name's Keith Knight. I do a strip called the K Chronicles. Since tying the knot a year and a half ago, a lot of readers have been asking me this question. Has this once macho he-master gone all soft now that I'm a married man? The answer is yes, I've gone all soft and supple. It's true, the best thing about getting hitched is being able to use all your wife's girly products in the bathroom. Stuff I wouldn't be caught dead buying in public. Okay, let's see, we've got some anti-crab ointment, anal wart remover, and a peach melba loofah scrub. Shh, not so loud with the loofah scrub. That's right, people, no more scrubbing the nether regions with lava soap for me. We've got rosemary and aloe vera eucalyptus leaves infused with hibiscus shampoo, organic sea kelp, and lamb semen exfoliating wash, colloidal oatmeal, and placenta enema. Honestly, y'all, using this stuff does make a difference. A lot of folks have been noticing. Gee, your skin feels terrific. So yeah, this is the K Chronicles. In a nutshell, it's autobiographical cartoons I've been doing for 30 years now. And what happens is I take stuff that happens in my life and I add a little twist and turn to it. And hopefully you'll laugh and possibly think. And, I talk about where I'm from and what I grew up seeing. And this is the picture that I remember most from growing up in Boston. It's this photograph. And I just remember being young and seeing that and just being like, what is all of that about? And we will return to that photo just later on into the presentation. Oh, actually, we won't return because this is not the new presentation. I'm glad that I just remembered that. Anyway, I'm going to refer to this photo sometime later on. So one of the wildest things about how I grew up is I didn't grow up I hadn't had a black teacher all through kindergarten to 12th grade. And there was a recent study that came out that said if a black student has one black teacher between kindergarten and 12th grade, their likelihood of going to college goes up 32%. And so the fact that I didn't have a teacher between then was pretty huge. But the wildest thing is I had a substitute teacher who didn't teach anything, but he was young, black, and he wanted to be a cartoonist. And so what he'd do is have a study class. He wouldn't teach anything, but what he would allow me to do is bring my chair up beside the desk and we would doodle together. And just spending the time doodling with him made me say, okay, this guy who looks like me wants to be a cartoonist. That means I can be a cartoonist too. It was a huge, huge thing. So, um, my first black teacher that I had was in Salem State, and it was my junior year, and he taught American literature. His name was Gerald Kendrick, and for American literature, he assigned us Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright, Maya Angelou, and James Baldwin. And when asked, you know, why is he giving us all black writers? He said, I'm giving you all American writers. And so when he said that, that blew my mind. That because here was a guy, for years we're taught that American literature is Mark Twain. It's Walden Pond. You know, it's a particular thing. And so for him to be part of the system but subvert the system while being a part of it, I thought was amazing. And so that stuck with me. And eventually my cartoons went from being about keg parties to being about what it's like to be a black man growing up in America. This is dedicated to that one black kid, the K Chronicles by Keith Knight. This is dedicated to that one black kid who lives in that tiny ass town off the highway in the middle of nowhere. This is dedicated to that one black kid who was not into hip hop in high school. Black Sabbath's not black, you know. This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets used as the reason why someone isn't a racist. I can't be prejudiced. My mom invited one to my 13th birthday party. This is dedicated to that one black kid with hair people want to touch all the time. Back off. Is it like a Brillo pad? This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets told they're not really black. Yo, man, brothers don't do what you do. Hey, it's a compliment coming from me. This is dedicated to that one black kid who always gets asked by white folks why they can't use the N-word. Why ask me? I don't use it. But you could if you wanted to. This is dedicated to that one black kid who wonders if they measure up to the myth. This is dedicated to this one black kid. So this is one of my most popular prints. It's like Black People Bingo. Whenever someone walks up to it and sees it, they say, oh, yeah, that's me. That happened to me. That happened to me. And I did this years ago. And, you know, they're called microaggressions now, but I didn't know what to call them before. But those microaggressions, you know, they make you think, they wear down on you. And this is a constant thing that happens all the time. And, you know, one of the things that drives me crazy is when people walk up to me and say, I'm not racist. My son is married to a black woman, or my dog is black, or, you know, something like that. And I always say to them, do you think that a man can't be sexist if because he's married to a woman, or that his mom is a woman? Like, in no other way do people like sort of, you know, you can still be racist if you got, I don't know, black pants or something. So you know, it's something to think about. Anyway, this is one of my favorite ones. It always amazes me the way people react when they first enter my bedroom. Holy smokes, what the hell are you doing with that blow-up doll? The K Chronicles by Keith Knight. Folks are often surprised to find a Feel Me Up Wilbur doll in my bedroom, although I don't know why. Tickle Me Elmo may be the #1 doll for America as a whole, but Feel Me Up Wilbur has been selling like hotcakes in the black community. They come in quite handy, although not for the use the manufacturer had originally intended. And he says, taxi. It's like, black man equals stabbed in back. Off duty, off duty. But wait, black man plus white guy equals okie dokie. Get the hell in here, boys. You see, because 5 black men standing on a corner without Wilbur is a gang. The 5 black men standing on a corner with Wilbur is a basketball team with a coach. They're banned in Boston, so I bought a few to send to my friends back east. Oh my God, look, it's Hootie and the Blowfish. So I did this when I was in San Francisco, and you know, for some of you younger kids, taxis were these things before Uber. And you stood on the side of the road and you tried to hail a taxi. And for black folks, it was hard for taxis just didn't want to stop and pick up black folks. Now, that Uber has taken over, I look forward to hailing taxis because every taxi stops for me now, and so it's my little revenge. What I do is I hail them, they stop, and then I look in and go, nah, nah. I don't even need the taxi. Um, sorry. But this is what I do with the K Chronicles. I love to tell stories. I come from a family that told great stories. I grew up in my great uncle had a bar downstairs, and the family would sit down there and have drinks and just spin stories and do accents, and it was really cool and fun. It was like, I want to do that in comic form. So in 1999, I was asked by Africana.com, a Black website, to do another strip. They said, we want you to do a strip for us. And I said, okay, but I'm going to do it exactly the opposite of the K Chronicles. Instead of multi-panel, it's going to be single panel. Instead of autobiographical, I'm going to take it from the news. And so I came up with Think. And, people say different things. They say the ink or I don't even know what they say. But what I noticed is this logo kind of looks like Snoopy. If you look at the parentheses, it looks like Snoopy's ear, and the dot is the eye for Snoopy. If you just have the nose on the end, I just want to say that, like, as I look at it right now. Anyway, this was the very first one I did. Denny's serving black since 1997. If signs told the truth. This is based on a bunch of Secret Service agents sued Denny's because they weren't being served in Washington, D.C. And it turned out Denny's all across America were they were making black folks wait longer. They were seating people that came in after them. They were making black folks pay before they got their food, like a bunch of different things. So they sued, and supposedly they changed, but I haven't been in Denny's in a very long time. But what I love about Think is you take they're ideas that I have that you can't flesh out into full K Chronicles. So I'm just going to run through these really quickly. Your sister had the baby, it's a boy. The exact moment radical black activist Thomas X realized that, yes, indeed, he was an Uncle Tom. What was promised? 40 acres and a mule. What was got? 40 ounces and a pit bull. This just in, police have just released a description of the alleged gunman who's been terrorizing the downtown area. Please don't let it be a black guy. Please don't let it be a Middle Eastern guy. Hot, they'll never catch me. The power of white privilege. Repeal and replace, dedicated to the stuff coming down across the Confederate stuff. I need another beer. The Supreme Court leak. The penis monologues with Will Chamberlain, Jimi Hendrix, and Milton Berle. How was it? Way, way too long. Kids, some of you young folks, ask your parents about it. You're doing this because I'm black, aren't you? Oh, now see, why do you always have to play the race card? So the race card, black on black crime. What else? Chicago. I don't know why Chicago. Well, I do know why Chicago. But these are all things that white people say when they want to avoid talking about the hardest thing to talk about in America, which is the race problem that America has. We need to have that awkward conversation. For far too long, the conversation over race has been dictated by white people feeling uncomfortable. So it stops then. And that's about 5.2 seconds, okay? We need to go past that into uncomfortable territory. It's the only way we'll be able to sort of move forward as a nation. Clearly, this nation has lost its mind after a black president was elected. Clearly. And I will say, my buddy John called it. You said it. You said, white people aren't ready. And I said, well, I don't think they'll ever be ready. But by the way people have reacted, it's completely insane. But we need to have that conversation. For far too long, the conversation has gone like this. One day at your old gallery opening, frankly, I don't care if you're a person who's black, white, green, purple, or brown. Me too. Who the heck are all these green and purple folks white people are always talking about? The K Chronicles by Keith Knight. I'm sorry, I consider myself relatively open-minded, but I have to draw the line at purple people. I know this ain't PC, but purple people are nothing but barely civilized knuckle draggers. Believe me, I know. I sat next to one in second grade. When I was growing up, a purple family moved in next door, and the whole neighborhood started to smell like Fig Newtons. And I swear this one guy was hired at my job just because he was, well, you know. I heard green folks have 3 nipples. I think I'd better be going. Me too. Be careful walking back to your car. The purple people might get you. So here's the deal. Unless Avatar is a documentary, there are no blue people. There are no purple people. There are no green people. Now, this joke I cannot say at a Comic-Con because there are blue and purple and green people. But I would say this. If a green person walked in here right now, walked up the stairs and sat behind you, you'd be sitting there going, why is this green? Why is there a green person in here? You'd be freaked out. But here's the thing that drives me crazy. When people say, I don't see color, okay? And they think that's a compliment, okay? When you say you don't see color, what you're doing is you need to not see me as black and dismiss that, which is a huge part of what I am. And so if you need to blank that out to see me as a person, as a human being, that's a problem. We should be appreciating the diversity of people, of friends, of family, of fellow students, of people you work with. And I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about whether it's class, whether it's religion, whether it's gender, whether it's age. Like, we should appreciate all, like, we all contribute to what makes America great. Is it's hard for me to say that because it doesn't sound very sincere. But the best of what America is its diversity, and its strength is in that. You can't tell me. I mean, I don't know what kind of meals you've had in the past week, but all I know is I've had, meals from around the world. And if you can get with a person's culture, with a person's food, with a person's, then you should be able to get with the people. And so I it's something to think about, something to appreciate. So in 2008, I made the biggest mistake of my career. I launched a daily cartoon called The Nightlife. 2008 was the worst year in newspaper history. That was the crash. A ton of newspapers went out of business, but my wife was pregnant with our first kid, and she's like, I'd really like to be a stay-at-home mom. So I took on doing a daily strip. So I was doing 2 weekly strips and a daily strip. So basically 9 deadlines a week. I did it for 11 years, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. But for what it's worth, there's 3. When I was coming up, there were 3 sort of bucket list things as a cartoonist. You have a daily strip, be in the New Yorker, and be in Mad Magazine. And I'd already gotten the 2. And so I'd only gotten 1 by that point. I was in Mad. And then I did the daily, and then I got into the New Yorker. So the great thing is I came up with some good stuff. And I actually the character of Clovis that wound up in the TV show didn't exist until I did the daily. So and here's the thing. I don't know why, but having a daily strip still has a little bit of cachet in Hollywood. And I think it proved to them the fact that I could consistently do this for 11 years, like, made them say, oh, okay, he's going to produce. So I'm just going to show you a couple of interesting ones. Do you think extraterrestrials are racist? Why do you ask? They never abduct people of color. It's easier to catch white people at night. So, so here's the thing. I was wrong. And here's the great thing about my fans is they're so smart. And so after the strip ran, I got all these letters, emails from people sending me the article of the first couple that was abducted by aliens, American couple. They were a mixed race couple. It was a black husband and a white wife. And I always write, well, they got caught because of the white wife. But I love when people write to me and say, you're wrong. This was one of my most popular ones. It's in color because it's a Sunday. A guy in my unit smothered an IED, took one for the team. When I got home, I went to tell his loved ones what kind of sacrifice he made. Turns out he was gay. I was the first one to let his partner know what happened. I've shared things with soldiers that I'd never tell family and friends. War does that. Here was a guy who gave his life for his fellow soldiers, but wasn't allowed to share with us who was waiting for him back home. If we're not fighting for this soldier's freedom, then what are we fighting for? So, Sunday strip. My strip ran on Sundays in the Washington Post, I think the San Diego Union Tribune. I know I was in the Herald during the week. I'm not sure if I was on Sundays too, but San Francisco Chronicle. But after this strip ran, I started getting all these letters from San Diego. San Diego is a big military town. And basically all the letters were the same thing, which is, you just changed my mind on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And this is what that strip was about. It was about Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was this rule in the military that you could be gay, but you can't tell anybody, which, right? Like you're putting your life on the line and you're like doing all that, and but you have to lie. And so this is the wildest thing, was it ran in April of that year. And like I said, I told you that my strip ran on Sundays in the Washington Post. Well, this was basically the Oval Office, and on the desk of this president is the Sunday Comics. Now that ran in April of that year, and in October of that year, he got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, I'm not saying I had anything to do with it, but the evidence sitting there on the desk. That's all I could say. So, comics can change the world. And another thing is, like, people will write and go, hey, that's not funny. Like, comics don't have to be funny. Like, comics can move you in a bunch of different ways. It's like, I don't know, saying, I don't know, that music didn't make me dance. It's like there's all these, it's supposed to do a lot of different things. So, yeah, that argument is kind of weird. So in 2015, I was basically got really frustrated because I had been doing comics about police brutality for years, and it just feels like something new happens. It's like, do I have to do another one? Do I have to do another one? And so I decided to put together a collection of my police brutality cartoons, and I found this picture, and I really just like this encapsulates everything. I cannot believe I still have to protest this shit. And I put together this slideshow and decided to tour the slideshow on police brutality. And there were a couple of telling things. One is the only place I would get hired to do the slideshow was overseas. Like the first place I did it was in Germany. But it doesn't surprise me when you think about it, because the U.S. is always going to produce movies about how the U.S. were the big heroes in World War II. They'll always like do German Nazi movies. So it's not surprising that the Germans will be like, hey, come here and tell us, like, America isn't the most perfect thing in the world either. And here's the thing, and this is one of the things we don't really learn about. The Nazis came here and learned from us how to treat the Jews by looking at how America treats its black population and its immigrant population. It's one of the parts of history that they don't like to teach. Anyway, I put together They Shoot Black People, Don't They? And it's 20 years of police brutality cartoons. It's now 30 years. And here's just a few of them. Police officer application question number 6. And I apologize. There were the version I was going to show tonight had more examples, but this is one I did in 2009. This is the firing range where police officers do target practice. How come all the targets are black? What do you mean? They're silhouettes. They're supposed to be black. I'm talking about the afro and the FUBU logo across the chest. Well, I'll be. So that is a basketball in his hand. It could be a watermelon. It could go either way. But here's the thing. 2009, I did this comic strip. In 2013, a woman in the military in Florida wanted to do shooting target practice. And she called her local police station, said, could I, shoot in your range? And they said, sure. So she goes there, and she goes in there. It's a black woman. And on in the shooting range for targets are giant blown up black and white photos of young black men. And one of them was her brother as a teenager. And when the police chief was, speaking to the press, he just basically said, it's not illegal what we're doing. Like, that was the comment. So I tell you this, do you think that this is some completely out of the blue thing that suddenly the culture broke bad? Like suddenly cops have decided to, target in 2013? No, it's been going on for decades, for centuries. And if you look at the beginning of the police were formed out of slave patrols. Slave patrols were poor whites that were hired to chase down runaway slaves and to keep the slave population in order. And so, basically part of the plan for rich whites was, how do we keep poor whites from basically rebelling and just saying we deserve some of this stuff too? Well, if we can just convince them that you have it bad, but at least you don't have it as bad as black people, that's the plan. And to this day, if you look at everything that's going on, that's exactly the play. We have rich white people convincing poor white people that somehow, some way, immigrants and blacks are taking everything that's theirs, Meanwhile, you got dudes who I can't even. Is there a board? Is there a marker? Is there something I can write up on here? No, there isn't. I just, I need people to understand this. $100 billion, $50 billion, $75 billion. If you cut that in half, so someone ends up with $30 billion, how is that going to change someone's life? Is that going to destroy that billionaire's life? No. They will never spend that money for generations. If you put that $30 billion back to people, what could that do? And there's a post online that says, once you hit a billion, they should just name a park after you. And it should be Elon Musk Park, I beat capitalism. And that's it. No one should be some crazy billionaire like that. If we took the top 10 richest people and cut their wealth 75%, their lives would not change a bit. And the world would be a much a less poor place. Let's just say that. But that's CRT. So this is the thing that I think is the biggest problem of what America is we don't teach history. And because we don't teach it, but we do teach history, but it's a fairy tale history. We teach Christopher Columbus history. Like Christopher Columbus was like some wonderful person, but in his own words, he said like, "Oh, these natives here, they don't have any weapons, they don't have any clothes. They'll make great slaves. Let's take them and rape them and do all this stuff." Like he in his own words, he was an asshole. and like, and we celebrate the Pilgrims. Even Jackie Robinson was not the first black professional baseball player. But they don't want to say that after Reconstruction, whites colluded and said, let's kick out all the black people out of professional baseball. And let's keep them out until years later where they said like, okay, like this alternative league, there's too many great people, there's too much money to be made. Let's, get them back in. But there is so much history that we don't teach. And when we gloss, like literally people always come up to me after, especially in Boston, they go, usually someone comes up to me and goes, what about the Irish? The Irish had it bad too. And I say this, the Irish had it tough, but the Irish did not come over here in the bottom of slave ships. They weren't taken, they weren't, merchants and kings and teachers and queens, and they weren't taken and laid down like in a what's it, little fish thing where sardine cans, and laid across each other and chained with the idea of most of these people are going to die. The strongest will be able to sell on the other side. And when they died or gave birth, they were assaulted. They'd take babies, throw them over the side to the sharks. And they'd get there, and then, like, if anybody had any issue, they would murder one just to send the message that if any of you screw up, this is what's going to happen to you. And then families are separated, and culture is destroyed. That did not happen to Irish people. Okay? In fact, the reason why the stereotype of like in these early cartoons of the Irish policeman is a lot of the Irish were hired to be part of the slave patrols. And when people say, "Oh, well, it was the South," a record of the early slave patrol was Charlestown. And when I was a kid, I was always told, "Don't go to Charlestown. It's like not a good place, for black people to, I know it's a little bit different now, but the history is there. We just don't teach it. And if we knew the history, everything that's going on today could be explained. Everything. And I just want to put it in perspective. And I don't want to put permanent marker on the thing, but I want to do this. I want to explain this. So I don't know how to do it. I'm going to do it to this because we don't really put this into perspective very well. That's all right. I'm going to do it really quick. We don't put this into perspective really well because we go over it like, I don't know about you, but when we talk about slavery, like it's like really quick. And they say, oh, and the owners, they don't say owners, the masters treated their slaves, a lot of them like family, which is bullshit. So here's what I need people to understand that nobody really contemplates, which is what could you do with 200 years of free labor? Like, what could you do? 200 years of free labor. And if you wanted to make more labor, you just take one and assault one, sexually assault one. And you just continue to do that. So let's say 1619 to 1865, so 250 years. So 250 years. So usually when in the presentations I do at the beginning, I say, does anyone have a pencil? And someone gives me a pencil, I break it and I drop it on the ground. And then I return to this pencil. And this pencil is, an example of what happens is when we break something, it's way quicker to break something than it is to fix something. So 250 years conservatively of breaking people. 250 years of breaking people, generations of people. So how long do you think it would take to fix that? Reconstruction was 10 years. After 10 years, they were like, that's enough time. And 40 acres and a mule, which were promised to freed slaves, never happened. So when people say, oh, well, why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Because they didn't have any boots. They weren't given anything. And I listened to, there's a series of interviews of former slaves that happened in the 30s that you can access online. And this one dude was talking about how his owner walked up to him and said, in far less, much ruder terms, said, all y'all are free. Get off my property or I will start shooting in about 5 minutes. So these folks who never knew anything about anything were suddenly had to go into town with nothing and had to look for housing, ask for housing, look for food. Nobody helped them. They had to start from nothing. And so when you have this much, and then you have this much of Jim Crow, and then you have this much affirmative action, and then a black president. So you're telling me this is supposed to fix this. If I took that broken pencil, how long would it took me a second to break it. How long would it take for me to fix it? A lot longer than a second. And I think people don't really understand that. And part of what the South were saying to the North is, there's no way we can pay, the economy of this country, if we had to pay our slaves, would just crash. That was part of their argument. You can't get rid of slavery. There's no way. And after Reconstruction, if we studied it, what is happening right now is what happened after Reconstruction, where there were Southern women were joining school councils and boards saying, don't teach that the Civil War is about slavery. Okay, teach it that it's about slaves' rights. About state rights, and that, Confederate soldiers were very brave and wonderful and all this different stuff. It's happening right now. Oh, don't teach. You're making white people feel guilty. You're making white people feel guilty. Listen, I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to make you feel angry because you're not being told the truth. That's it. If we were told the truth, then everything could be explained. So here's the thing. Because we only learn about European excellence, when stuff like the pyramids aren't built by white people, there are people who literally believe aliens did it. They would believe aliens did it before anybody else other than white people did it. And that's a problem. And that's the thing is the history that we teach shouldn't just be, miserable and oppression, because here's the amazing thing. Despite all the bullshit that Black folks have had to deal with over the centuries, and this is something I didn't discover until I moved to the South, which is really I never commented on the South until I moved to the South. And then I would go to slave plantations, and they have they don't want to make white people feel uncomfortable, so they have these funny stories. But you could feel the spirit of the people that were there. You can totally see what was accomplished. And you said, they weren't allowed to learn to read. They weren't allowed to do all this different stuff. Yet they did anyway. A lot of folks did anyway on the down low. And you realize that Black folks now are the descendants of the strongest people that survived that Middle Passage and what they went through. And you sit there and, people always say, oh, you look really good for 56. You look really, imagine if racism didn't exist, how good I'd look and how old I'd be. I'd live till I was 150. Anyway, people say, oh, why is it always going to be about race? Why is it always going to be about race? America it's all about race. There is nothing you can tell me that isn't tainted with some racial hierarchy, bizarre thing, all the way down to $700 is the average amount that black people get overcharged for a car. Like if you go and they'll automatically say $700 more than a white person. I don't know if you read the recent thing where these two professors, black professors, wanted to have their house appraised, and they got it appraised for something, and then they moved all the black stuff out, had their white friend do it, and it was like literally $300,000 more. Like that happens all the time. And I think this is the difference between what white people think racism is and what black people think racism is. It's not about hate in your heart. It's not that. There are people with hate in their hearts. That's true. But it's about the system that is in place that is not blatant. It's a subtle thing that happens that it can be pointed out, but it could very easily be dismissed like, oh, you can't prove it. Can't get it on video. It's like, those are the type of things we have to dismantle, and it's not easy. But one REI is a great example of they do a really good example about wealth in America, because I know the Boston Globe did this thing that the average white family has $200,000 worth of wealth, and black family has $8,000 worth of wealth. A monopoly board. Imagine if white people walked into a room and saw black folks who have been playing Monopoly for 3 hours. And the black people said, hey, you want to join the game? And the white people were like, well, no, you guys have been playing for a while, and you've got all the hotels and all this different stuff. And the black people go, what are you talking about? I started out with $200. We're going to give you $200. What are you complaining about? That's the situation that we're in. So, this idea that what happened in the past, I've got nothing to do with that, blah, blah, blah. White folks were able to build wealth through home ownership and land ownership. So when the U.S. was giving out mortgages for really low cost in the 30s and stuff, black folks weren't getting that stuff. In fact, they were fighting overseas to give rights to people that they weren't getting at home, and they were coming back and being treated by their fellow soldiers like shit. My dad to this day will not visit me in North Carolina because of how he was treated in the South in the Army. And so white folks were able to build up wealth. Black folks were always put in different parts of town, which are generally the east side of town. The wind blows all the chemicals and all the sewage, and so generally the east part of town you will find to be the black neighborhoods. You'll see this all across America. And then, highways were built to cut people off. If there were any thriving towns, stuff would be destroyed. Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898, the only successful coup in America was in 1898. Wilmington, North Carolina, most successful city in the state. White people weren't happy about it. It was a multiracial government that came in and murdered everybody. And we don't teach that. We don't. And we should, because we see what happens. It's not all, again, there are success stories. Robert Smalls was a slave from Beaufort, South Carolina, and He commandeered a Confederate ship, dressed up as the captain, and sailed through a bunch of Confederate boats to the Union soldiers. Went up there, convinced President Lincoln to use freed slaves in the Union Army. Went back down after the war was over, bought his old house. The woman who owned him came out of the mental institution, and he let her sleep in her original bedroom until she died. But he became an orator, politician, all this stuff. Crazy story. There's all these rumors that they're going to make a movie out of it. Who knows? Josephine Baker, most people know her as a nude dancer in Paris, but she was also a spy for the French. Amazing story. And she is like, I forget the thing that they put their most revered French people in death, but she is one. Like, there were so many black soldiers that and entertainers who leave this country because they're appreciated in other countries more. And this is the thing. And it is true to this day. Black culture is American culture. All of the stuff that we create is generally, like, culturally speaking, is black. Rock and roll, jazz, hip hop, all that stuff is black, and we export it. But everything, slap shots in hockey were invented by black people. There was a descendants of freed slaves who went up to Nova Scotia, started a league before the NHL, and they saw what they were doing, all these different rules, including a slap shot, and then they incorporated it into the NHL. You will never hear that in a million years. And you probably sit there going, that's bullshit. But I swear to you, The Color of Hockey, check it out. There are so many crazy, amazing stories that just do not get told. So I always urge everybody, speak to any black person 65 years or older for 10 minutes, and you will learn more about black history than you've ever heard. I talked to, my dad was hassled by the cops all the time. My dad got the mortgage for our first house because the person on the other end of the phone thought he was white. Like his voice, he thought he was white. And the way he was speaking to him, he thought he was white. My mom was a sharecropper. She picked cotton. Sharecroppers are what they called slaves. Once slavery was gone, they would pay them pennies a day to pick cotton. If she didn't pick enough cotton, she would be beaten. Her sister picked more cotton to give to her so she wouldn't get beaten. When slavery was banned, the slavery wasn't outright banned. Slavery could exist for people who were incarcerated. So as punishment, you could make them work for free. So welcome to the prison industrial complex. It's like, okay, as long as we catch them for loitering or just doing anything, we can make them slaves again. Chain gangs, all that stuff. These are the things that they're lawful, but it's basically the system working against folks. Colin Kaepernick, what he did, this guy did decades before. Decades before. He was hated, People always write online, oh, Martin Luther King did it right. He didn't do any protests. There was no any damage. This is a cartoon from, back in the day. Martin Luther King was one of the most hated men in America, especially later on when he stopped, I shouldn't say he never stopped doing it about civil rights, but he started doing about workers' rights. And that's when they were like, oh, wait a second, he's getting real dangerous now. Everything that's happened before explains what's happening now. So all lives matter. The last thing I want to say about all lives matter. If I have a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says save the rainforest, it does not mean fuck the other forests. It means the rainforests are being cut down and something needs to be done about it. So when I say Black Lives Matter, it's not that I don't care about other lives. It's just that there are like, and I'm talking about across the board. It's not just police brutality. It's the way neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, again, these are the worst, generally the worst parts of town. Banks would redline these areas so they wouldn't give loans to people from these areas. They wouldn't plant trees in this area. They wouldn't put decent sewage, like clean, like just piping and different things like that. There's a reason why places like, is it Jackson, Mississippi doesn't have clean water, or Flint doesn't have clean water. You're not going to see like some white town that is not getting this stuff. It's just it, and you can't sit there and go, oh well, it's just black people that can't get it together. No, it's like it's systemic, and those things need to be. It just you have to sit there and go, yes, this is an issue, and that we need to work to solve it. So, let's get to the happy part. So, here's the thing. I had my own experience with the cops where I was hanging up posters and I was putting up posters and cops came, and this one cop actually came up and jumped out of his car and he was like, what are you doing? I said, I'm hanging up posters for my band. I have a stapler in my hand. I'm going to put it down. And he gets on the thing and he's like, hey, we have the suspect. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, you fit the description of a suspect who's been robbing houses in the neighborhood. This is in my neighborhood at San Francisco after me living there 10 years. I said, what's the description? He said, 6 foot tall black male. And that's it. He said nothing else. 6 foot tall black male. And so essentially that could be anybody, except Nate, who's a bit larger than 6 feet tall. So then I look down the street, one street, there's cops coming. I look up the street, cops coming. Down the street, cops coming. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is the thing that I've been writing about for years. And they all just colluded on me. And I just wanted to take it in, like, because I always see people, this going through people, happening to people. So I was just like, what's it like looking on the outside? I turned into cartoonist. And I was trying to catch the eyes of people driving by. And, if people saw me looking at them, they would just freak out. Like it was really just like really wild. But at the top of the hill, there was a bus coming. And on that bus was my roommate, my white roommate, who was on this bus. And he looks down there. He sees all these cops are down there. And he's like, SFPD hassling another black man. And as he gets closer, he sees it's me. And he's like, holy shit, like that's, I know him. And so he jumps out of the bus. I see the bus drive away. And this guy is a little guy, Dagan. And he sees all these cops there. And he just comes running at them. Like running, screaming, swearing, like he's just going to start pounding everybody. And all the cops, they all turn and they see this guy coming in slow motion, just coming like, get the fuck away, all this stuff. And they all turn around and they're just like, take it easy, buddy. Take it easy. Like they treated him like he was the manager. He was up in their faces, screaming at them and doing all this stuff. I was like, Dagan, like, take it easy, man. Take it easy. And right then I saw, like, if he had been black or brown, he would have been tased. He would have been beaten. He would have been shot. Like the way cops respected him, even with him screaming, I was like, this is, this turned out to be the basis of my TV show, of the pilot of Woke. In 2015, I think it was, maybe 2016, is the first vestiges of it. I pitched it to a couple of people, and they were like, oh, they liked the stories I told, and they liked the comics. So I just started flying out there and pitching to different places. And what happened is they paired me up with an experienced writer, and we worked out the idea of the pilot and sort of the pitch. And we went into HBO, Showtime, Amazon, Hulu, and one other place. And a couple of places had interest, but it was Hulu that was really aggressive. And so they commissioned us to do a script. And, I've never written TV before, but I knew that I could write it once the scene, if you've seen the pilot, when I wrote the scene where they find the wallet. So there's a scene where it's basically in the pilot between Keith and Clovis, and they find a wallet, and Keith wants to bring it to the cops, and Clovis is like, I'm not gonna bring this empty wallet to the cops, like, and basically it's 101, screenwriting 101, how to establish characters without blatantly describing the characters, And so once I was finished with that scene, I was like, I can write television. And they did it so well. The actors were so amazing. And, how we got the actors, I can't even tell you. The script started to go around and people were like, this is amazing. Everybody who came in to audition basically said, like every black actor said, thank you for giving us something different, because, ultimately, even if somebody black writes it, it still has to go through white people. And my wife said it best. She said, when I met you and your friends and your family, you don't speak like black people do on TV and movies. And I was like, yes, no, we don't speak that way. Like someone is approving that, and it's not black people approving that. And that, that's what I wanted to bring to television, which is it was important for him to wear a Dead Kennedys t-shirt. It was important for us to open the show not with hip hop, but with something different, because black people do like music that you wouldn't expect black people to like, because that's all you see on TV. We like all types of music. If it wasn't for black people, all the music you'd hear on the radio is like Renaissance music. Do, 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 do. So, that's very important. These are some of the actors. Blake Anderson from Workaholics was the perfect Gunther. Doesn't look anything like the character, but he was the hardest character to cast. Every guy who came in was a good stoner, but they were creepy. But Blake is such a he was amazing. Mo Marable, the guy with the glasses, was the director, and he's the one who came in and said, I don't want the animation in the show to be just 2D. I want it to be puppetry. I want it to be like surreal. And he came with he came with the inspiration of Amelie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Sorry to Bother You, and Do the Right Thing. And I was like, this is my guy, And T Murph, this was his first gig. It was his first acting gig, and he blew it out of the ballpark. Clovis, the character, was supposed to be a much bigger person with dreads. This little guy comes in with this giant beard and was just like amazing. He was just really, really funny and just funny person. I in both seasons I have these cameos, and so if you've watched the first season, my character gets punched in the face by a koala. I was the koala, so I got to punch my own character. These are my sisters who came to visit me on set, and and I couldn't see a thing out of the koala outfit, so they'd be like, I'd be in it, and they'd go koala, and I'd go up like this, and then just go like that, and I would hear people go, I don't think he's ever thrown a punch in his life. So this is me on the set of the second season, and what was great about this is we shot it in Atlanta, and it was the first time everybody on set, we had it was so hard when we were in Vancouver to get any black folks. I think we used every black actor in Vancouver, and we couldn't find Latino actors. So in Atlanta, it was really amazing, and also behind the scenes that we used a lot of black tech people and stuff like that, and some of the directors were like, "Oh my God, I've never been on a set that was like, these are black directors. I've been in the business for 20 years, and I've never seen this many black people working on a show before." So that was a big accomplishment for us. But the second one was I got to work. The Wire is my favorite show. Like, I am obsessed with The Wire. I'm so obsessed with The Wire that I'm overly concerned about all the actors in it, and so I always check on them to see how they're doing. But um, I got to employ Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who played Clay Davis in The Wire, and he was this politician that would always go shit, like, and he was a very corrupt politician. And it was amazing just sitting with him and just listening to the stories. The first gig he ever did was his first gig was Goodfellas, and just the stories that he told were just really amazing and just really fun. Um, this is one of my favorite episodes of season 2, which was we wanted to do a takeoff on One Night in Miami. I don't know if you're familiar with One Night in Miami, but it's like this sort of what happened when Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and who was there was a fourth athlete, Jim Brown, were all together at this hotel. So basically, our character Sashir Zamata plays Ayana, and she was amazing. She was a minor character in the first season, and she was so good we just kept on writing her in more stuff. But she basically trips on mushrooms at a motel and then manifests all these historical figures, and it was great. I think our only mistake is we had a director who had never tripped on mushrooms before, so we had to do a lot of things in post. Um, Not that I advocate anybody to trip on mushrooms at a young age, but it's being legal. Like people are saying, it's great for therapy and alcoholism and all that stuff. So this is the second my second cameo, and I played, and I've done strips about being a black mime and how tough it must be because people saying, oh, you can wear whiteface but we can't wear blackface, stuff like that. And so and someone says it, we put it in ADR, and someone say, how come you can do whiteface? And here's what I realized. um, all they had to do was put a beret on my head. Like, I didn't even have to change my clothes. So I guess I dressed like a low rent mime. I just dressed like a mime. So, but it was in the mime we wanted to hire wanted $600 for this one scene. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. Um, this again, this wasn't in this one, but I was lucky enough to present and get my honorary doctorate here at this wonderful university, and um, I love it because you know. Now, I even put in my byline now. It says Dr. Keith Knight instead of by Keith Knight, and no one has called me out on it yet. And I love it. I love it. Um, this is in Malden, Massachusetts. While I was here for getting the doctorate, they dedicated a mural to me. I got to do a mural, which is a Life's Little Victories about Malden. Now, I know the Orange Line. This doesn't. This ain't working right now, so that did not age well. But what I love about this one is Malden and Medford, which is the oldest high school Thanksgiving rivalry in the country, is happening at Fenway Park this year. So that's going to be pretty amazing. Like I almost want to come back for that, but I don't want to see all my high school slobs. Just joking. So here's another thing that I've done, and you may want to contribute to this. So one of the things that drives me crazy, I know I'm going way over. I apologize. One of the things that drives me crazy when I search news for ideas for my strips are mugshots, specifically Black people mugshots. The only time you see Black folks are in mugshots in the news. That's it. Like, unless it's like a sport thing or something. So it drives me up a wall. So I was like, maybe I had just too much time on my hands. But what I did was I bought the URL blackmugshots.com. I took a picture of myself with a mug, and I said, okay, how long would it take for me to get into the Google image search of black mugshots if I just like took a picture of myself, put it online, put black mugshot, and then start having people forward it and do it all this stuff, and then have other people do it too. So it took me about a month and a half. So all these people started sending in their mugshots. So black people could send in any mug with a picture with any mug. White people, non-blacks had to have a black mug. And so they all, it was all black mugshots. We got written up in Boston.com, the Washington Post, and a few other things that got syndicated. And it took a month and a half. And then I broke into the Google mugshots. So if you look up black mugshots on Google, I will come up. And I think Lamorne comes up too. Lamorne Morris, who plays me in the show, he did a mugshot too. And so yeah, please submit to black mugshots. It's really fun to get them, and a few different really cool people submitted stuff. So this is the last thing. Racism in America is like that big pile of dog poop that sits on the grass in front of your apartment building. It's been there for as long as you can remember, and nobody knows how it got there. Nobody wants it there, yet no one wants to clean it up. They say, why should I? I didn't leave it there. Soon you just accept it. You do your best to avoid and or ignore it. It's that pile of poop that allows someone like Trayvon Martin to be murdered while his killer walks. The flies that are attracted to that poop are the people who put "don't renege" bumper stickers on their vehicles. I don't care about the flies, just clean up the shit. So what I'm saying is we all need to do our part. Now, you don't need to punch a Nazi in the face, but what I would like you to do is just, even if it's like your racist uncle. I always hear about these racist uncles that if you just call them out once, they'll get mad at you, but they'll always have it in their head that someone stood up to them. All the people that whenever I try to prove to somebody that white supremacy exists, there are white people who have never dealt with people of color in their lives. And they're completely successful, extremely successful. For me to be completely successful, I have to go through white people. Like, there's no way I could just not deal with any white people. The gatekeepers of Hollywood, the gatekeepers of any sort of business, if I were to do reparations, I wouldn't do money. I would give the rights exclusively of marijuana cultivation and business to black people. And white people, if they want to get into the business, they'd have to go through black people, because we've overly been incarcerated because of weed. The people who come out because of that can't even get licenses to go into business for it. And the legalization of weed, it's 95% white owned. It's like completely reversed. And so I would, I don't think anybody would argue that. It's like, that's a good idea. So there's a couple of other things. With police brutality, instead of someone, people getting killed and beat up and murdered and all this stuff, and then it comes out of taxpayer money when the family sues, make it come out of police pensions. And not just the one person, like the whole police department that they're from, the precinct, because all I know is bad cops are protected more than good cops. And I'm talking about when I say good cops, I'm talking about good cops that are willing to say this is a bad cop and they need to be removed. They're the ones who get pushed out, the good cops. I'm telling you, if it came out of their pockets, cops would be like, listen, you're dipping into my pocket now, so you need to go get another job somewhere, And I would say this, if people get punished more for assault on police, I would say police, who know the law better than anyone else, should be punished more for drug dealing, because they know the laws, they have access, domestic violence, all that different stuff. They know the laws. So, what if they should be punished more? Like that's I there's a lot of ranting I could do, but I'm not going to rant anymore. That's my show. There's plenty of books, and here's the thing: I would specifically pick out books like because I think there's a lot of money to be made in the anti-racism game. I would check out books by James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, like the older books, because you'll see that they're ranting about the same things that we do today. And there was I read an article where they examine all these things about the issues that are affecting the Black community 50 years before now and 50 years even before then. And it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. We are solving nothing. So, yeah, check it out. And listen, if you ever wondered what you would do if you were alive in the civil rights movement, now is the time to find out. Now, right now. And I will say the last thing. I said it at commencement. I got a message through Facebook, and it was someone I went to school with that was in the dormitory. And she said, Keith, you don't remember me, but I was in your dormitory, and I told a joke that you took me aside and said, that joke you told me that you said was offensive, and this is why. And she said, you affected me in a way that to this day was 20, 30 years later that, I start calling people in my family out on stuff and just like now my kids, their friends are so much more diverse than my friends were and all this different stuff. And she said, I want to thank you for that. And listen, I did not remember this person. I did not remember saying that. I was probably stoned. But it's Johnny's like, yeah, I was there. It's these little things that you don't think affect people, but they do. They do. And I'm not telling you to punch a Nazi in the face, but we can do little things. We can suggest. It's so important, I think, to have a diverse like teachers and school select. Like I had more books where animals were protagonists than people of color. Like Animal Farm and what was the Jack London books? Like anything with dogs, creatures and stuff. I didn't have any Black heroes reading about them in school. Like it's so important to have that stuff, and it's so important. Honestly, really, it's so important for everybody else to see that there is so much more. So it's really important. I thank you for sitting through this. Again, this was a little bit put together. Yeah, it didn't work out on this, but I have books, I have prints here. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Yes.
Can I ask about the show?
Sure, that's.
And so I read online that season 3 wasn't going to happen because Hulu didn't want to put in the money.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a money thing, but also, I mean, a lot of people are frightened by the name because, like, woke has really been vilified. Like, there's been this sort of woke has become the PC, like, is now the politically correct, word, and so they're totally slamming that. So, to this day, I get emails and people posting online going, why didn't anybody tell me woke was hilarious? The Atlantic just they just had an article about shows that went under the radar. It just came out like last week and praising our show. It's a slow burn. The great thing about streaming is once it's canceled, it doesn't disappear. So it's going to be there. My lawyer, one of my lawyers said, listen, this is going to be a slow burn and people are just going to continue to discover it. And, we won't get a season 3, but at least people know who I am and they're waiting for the next thing for me to pitch. And whatever I pitch is going to be smart and funny. So that's it. Anything? Anything?
It sounds like we need to start change.org.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They get back.
Well, listen, it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be bad, but I just really think they have, since they put out so many shows, the advertising people have no sort of, I don't want to, because I don't think they're bad people, but I just think they have a sort of cookie cutter way of advertising things. And we really wanted to lean into it. Like, oh, the Stop Woke Act. Oh yeah, let's do something with that. Oh, I wanted to have billboards that said, are you suffering from secondhand woke? Call us, we can help. Stuff like that. And they didn't go for it. And so it's that type of stuff. But in retrospect, maybe I should have spent 10 grand and just like said, like, at least I'll have these cool billboards. Any more? Yes.
I hate to ask, but what is a meaning bumper sticker?
Oh, yeah, I cut off the beginning of that cartoon when Obama was running for the second term. There are, if you go to the right places, there are these bumper stickers that are like, yeah. You probably won't find many on the East Coast in Massachusetts, but a few other places. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, I thank you for coming out.